I will never forget the look on my father's face that morning. There he was, standing in our front yard, his 73-year-old frame so small and compact all of a sudden, soaked to the skin from head to toe. Water dripped from his crisply pressed vet's cap, down his face, onto the medals pinned to his chest. He didn't move, didn't utter a word, just stood there, rigid and silent, with a 1,000-yard stare that shattered my heart. And there was Diane Matthews, admittedly affectionately known in the community as Karen, berserkly spraying him down with a garden hose while screaming about patriotism and respect for the flag. My dad, who had worked for this country 30 years, who had been shot in Vietnam and ever since used a cane to walk, did not even flinch to protect himself. He would not let himself be anything but dignified. But it didn't prevent water from rising up to the ankles at his feet as Diane screamed phony about true patriots. This nightmare began just 3 days earlier, when Dad arrived to spend Memorial Day weekend with me. It had become our tradition since my mom passed away. He'd visit, we'd watch the local parade, fire up the grill, and enjoy some quiet, meaningful time together. Dad wasn't a grand speech kind of guy or a gesture sort. Neither was his generation of soldiers, but he didn't need to. Sitting on the porch with me spoke volumes about how much his coming meant to him. This year, of course, was particularly special. He would, at last, meet my fiancée, Melissa, who had been waiting to get acquainted with the man whom I admired most in the world. Our neighborhood was a quiet, suburban enclave of neatly trimmed lawns and friendly folks. The only true bother was the Homeowners Association, and more specifically, its self-absorbed president, Diane Matthews. In her mid-50s, with a permanent scowl and a trusty clipboard clutched in her hand, Diane had earned the reputation of being the neighborhood dictator. In the 2 years I'd lived here, I'd been cited for a mailbox that was the wrong shade of beige, grass that was a 1/4 inch too tall, and for keeping Christmas lights up until January 3rd. I'd learned to stay on her good side by playing along. Others weren't as lucky. The Williamses got fined $300 for planting unapproved roses. Mr. Henderson was nearly dragged into HOA arbitration for a unauthorized burgundy paint job on his door instead of cranberry sunset. I cautioned Dad before he came over. Just smile and nod. She's harmless, as long as you don't cross her. Dad chuckled. Son, I've dealt with drill sergeants and enemy fire. I can deal with one neighborhood busybody. Neither of us had any idea how wrong he was. Trouble started on his first morning here. Dad, an early riser by habit, was out for an early walk while I slept. Downstairs, I discovered him already back, drinking coffee on the back porch, looking distressed. Everything okay, Dad? I asked. He gestured across the street to the community center. Diane stood there beneath the neighborhood flag, frowning our way. She yelled at me, he went on quietly, for not saluting the flag. I was just going through. I explained to him that Diane had ordered a daily flag ceremony at 8 a.m. and had been insisting in a forceful way that residents attend and participate. Most have politely refused her or made excuses, but Diane had insisted more firmly. Dad just shook his head. I respect the flag more than most, he said, his hand on the pin on his coat. But I don't have to stage an act for anyone in order to show it. The next morning, I walked with him. Naturally, as we passed by the flag ceremony, Diane and a few of the HOA board members were standing there. Her gaze flashed at Dad, and she bristled. Your father needs to show the proper respect, she spat in my direction. At attention and saluting is the absolute minimum. I felt Dad tense beside me, but I put a soothing hand on his arm. He has been in the service 30 years, ma'am, I explained as coolly as I could. I believe he has the right to show his respects in his own way. Her face flushed deep red. Rules are rules, she snapped. There are no exceptions. I thought that was done with. How terribly different. Dad was outdoors on Memorial Day proper, drinking coffee. I was indoors getting breakfast ready when I heard shouting. I opened the front door. What I saw is seared into my memory. Diane Matthews stood on my lawn, hosing down my older father with a garden hose, shouting about disrespect and the flag. Think you're too big to salute? She screamed. This is what happens when you don't give respect to our country." My dad just stood there, soaked, expressionless, cane held in one hand. He didn't scream. He didn't lash back. But I wasn't so controlled. I sprinted outside. "What the devil's wrong with you?" That's my dad. He's a war vet. My shouting brought neighbors. Doors creaked open, heads ventured out. People stared in amazement. Diane finally stopped shouting, but would not give up. "He refused to salute the flag during the ceremony," she bellowed. "As HOA president, I have a responsibility. There is no rule requiring residents to salute the flag," our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Castillo, cut in. "And even if there were, it wouldn't be worth this." The other neighbors also nodded. Mr. Patel stepped forward, holding his phone. "I recorded the whole incident," he said, "right from the start, when she started shouting." Diane's face went white. I dialed 911. "I need police help," I announced clearly. "A woman is physically attacking my elderly father, a war hero, on my premises." The officers arrived promptly. Statements were made. Mr. Patel showed them the video. Diane was charged with assault and battery on a senior citizen, a felony in our state, along with criminal trespass and disorderly conduct. While the officers read her rights to her, Diane spluttered. "You can't be serious. I'm the HOA president. I was enforcing community standards." The younger officer simply shook his head. "Being president of the HOA does not give you carte blanche to beat people up, especially not a vet. On Memorial Day." They walked her over to the cruiser as the neighborhood remained in stunned silence. Her protests faded into the distance. Later, we found out the district attorney would not make her a plea deal. The charges were punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to fire her. Her work, she was a real estate agent, placed her on unpaid leave the same day. The local paper printed it on page 1, with a photo of Diane halfway through the spray, Dad unimpressed in his soggy uniform. 3 days later, Diane returned to fetch some items from her residence. I was with Dad when her car pulled up. She held her head down until she saw him on the porch. They looked at one another for an awfully long time. Then, much to my astonishment, Dad stood up slowly, his cane by his side, and delivered her a perfect, stern military salute. Her face crumpled. For the first time since I'd known her, Diane Matthews had nothing to say.